welcome to the Babette YouTube channel on lobby negotiations and advocacy. Today we're going to analyze Norway as a third party to the peace negotiations in Colombia. We'll talk about different factors that third parties have to deal with, such as multidimensional motives in conflicts, the wide variation in the capacity of the parties to effectively negotiate, cows and spoilers, war crimes prosecutions, and first steps to implement after the peace agreement is signed. So let's go back to the beginning of the Colombian peace talks. They were officially launched in Oslo 2012, but for a long time before, Norway and Cuba had sat down with both parties to facilitate talks between them in order to achieve an agreement based on negotiations. Since the early 90s, the central aspect of Norway's foreign and development policy is promoting conflict resolution. They consider it primordial because conflict is a direct challenge to development and a threat to global security. Norway is aware that conflicts have multidimensional motives, such as prestige, power, financial gain, or to seek protection or self-positioning for the next conflict. Besides acknowledging those motives, it's also important to take steps to deal with them. And that's exactly what Norway and Cuba did by leading the parties towards fixing an agreed agenda before they formally began the negotiations. Well, that's a very smart move. The agenda isn't only part of the Colombian peace negotiations, but it's also used in other peace negotiations. Peace agreement structure contains some similarities, but parties usually don't have access to template agreements. Development professionals can provide technical assistance in order to make sure both parties follow a certain pattern similar to other peace agreements, and it's because of their experience and knowledge that they can do that. The resulting agenda we were talking about before included 6 points that cover both causes and effects of the conflict. They were rural reform, political participation, illicit drugs, victims, end of conflict, and implementation. Parties usually don't have much experience on peace negotiation. If they do, it's usually only one of them. The ideal situation would be parties having trained negotiators. However, this situation doesn't really apply to these past peace negotiations in Colombia. Some of the people with both parties had already sat down around the same table for the 1999 to 2002 peace talks. We all know they failed. Otherwise, Norway would have had another challenge to face, as the international community is reluctant to offer trained negotiators to non-state actors. The main argument is that non-state actors are usually rebels or self-determination movements. The ending result is development professionals ensuring all parties equal access to resources, training, and assistance. Norway, rather than Cuba, has potential state actors as partner that could have helped, but likely enough it wasn't necessary. So good for you, Norway. It definitely helped the fact that Norway has a good positioning in the international arena. Another factor Norway expected was cows and spoilers. Cows can take place because some individuals might find it difficult to change their mindset from conflict to negotiations. In that case, peace negotiations can become unsafe. It can definitely be considered as an added challenge to peace talks, as a trusting environment built with development professionals can easily break. It makes it more difficult for parties to start peace negotiations, as it doesn't distance themselves from the conflict. Even though third parties can't stop death threats to happen, they can provide technical support to make peace negotiations safer. And that's what Norway did when Las FARC killed 11 government soldiers during their peace negotiations in April 2015. Afterwards, President Santos ordered aerial bombings that ended up killing several FARC members as well. But that wasn't a very smart move from either of them. This event could have happened because both parties hadn't taken enough distance from the conflict, or because they simply didn't have a genuine desire to achieve a peace agreement in order to stop the conflict. Spoilers happen because parties take a better position relative to other parties in conflict. However, Norway took advantage of the warm feeling that both parties had in common. Colombia. While apparently soccer also helped in the early stage of the peace negotiations, as they watched a soccer game together. The game was Colombia versus Venezuela. Now, could it be that Venezuela set the game on purpose that it would influence the talks? We shall not forget that Venezuela and Chile are also kind of mediators in the conflict. Anyways, that's just a little conspiracy. As a development professional, it's extremely important to set steps to be fulfilled after the peace negotiation has been achieved. It should be done so trust isn't undermined among the parties or even among the population affected by the conflict. Development professionals' role here is to help parties create a feasible roadmap in order to implement the peace agreement. An example could be a security sector reform. Norway has quite an experience on peace and reconciliation as well, as tools available to work for it. It also has a flexible approach concerning the implementation of a strategic use of development aid. Such experience and tools have had a positive output for the peace negotiations by avoiding the International Criminal Court intervention. The ICC can have a negative impact on peace negotiations, partly because the parties involved don't really understand the consequences of the intervention of such institution. In addition, the international institution ends a conflict by political pressure on parties in order to negotiate a peace agreement and to provide accountability for serious crimes. So, just to remind ourselves, Norway has a role here. First of all, they want to achieve a peace agreement together with Cuba. So that in first place would avoid the intervention of the ICC. And also, as we'll see in a little bit, they also plan this mechanism that provides accountability for serious crimes. Development professionals can help reduce the impact of the ICC by creating awareness among the parties on how the ICC can intervene and provide possible solutions in order to avoid it. It's also helpful the creation of a domestic transitional justice mechanism. And that's what Norway together with Cuba did. They promoted in the talks with the parties. As a consequence, the special jurisdiction for peace was created. Its purposes are the following: satisfying the victim's right to justice, obtaining truth for the Colombian society, contributing to the reparation of victims, fighting against impunity, offer legal security to those involved in the armed conflict, and to contribute to a long-lasting peace environment. Such mechanism addresses accountability and reinforces the victim's right, as we were talking about it. This past September, the ICC released a statement favoring the SGP. It expressed hope and satisfaction of Colombian court's determination to ensure accountability for the most serious crimes and respect for the rights of the victim. By November 17, 3,499 ex-guerrillas and 1,714 current and former security force personnel had signaled their intention to be tried by the SGP. Again, well done, Norway. It definitely cleared the role of Norway was a key component of the peace talks. But let's see if they keep on working in the future. So thank you for connecting with Babette's show. I'll see you next week on more topics concerning lobby, negotiation, and advocacy.